Hey guys. And we should be live. I was just fiddling around trying to make sure that the OBS is running. I was trying to get an overhead camera, but unfortunately I was not able to make that work. I'm just trying to get the screen so that my face isn't covering what is visible, because I'm sure that nobody wants to see my face more than they want to see what is happening in the screen capture. Okay, that should be it. I don't know why the video is so damn yellow, my face, but who cares? We need to start working on stuff, so let's do that. The mic has a little bit of echo. Let me check. Oh, there's probably Discord on, so I'm gonna take that out. What about now? Hopefully it didn't autoplay. Sometimes it autoplays. Still echo. Okay. I'm gonna just disable some of these things. Does it now sound better? I think I had two microphones on. Wait, maybe this microphone is a bit better. It just seemed to be a bit hot. I reduced the sound. Webcam microphone is now off. Video source. Okay, now it's fixed. Thank you so much for letting me know, because I don't hear my own voice when I'm doing this. I don't know why the screen gets getting turned off all the time, but maybe that's because I need to actually be doing stuff. So I have imported a Procreate file here. So the first thing that I want to do is convert layers to tracks. So I long pressed that and did that. And now you can see that everything here is in one big group, which is not good because we want to use these groups for useful things. So to separate everything, I'm gonna ungroup every single item right here. And you can see that some of the blend modes are wrong because I'm not supposed to have any of these white lines in here. So maybe something needs to be in screen, and we're gonna go through all of that. Also, I don't think the whole illustration is quite centered because I don't want this halo to be cut off by the top half. So I'm gonna fix that right now. I'm gonna turn off the recorder because I don't have a recording on, and recorder is seriously the hottest device that you can possibly have in your office. That's generating most of the heat here, and I don't wanna fry myself. Okay, so I'm gonna go back by double tapping the screen. So now that I have everything in one single group, it's easier to move absolutely everything. By the way, you can do a temporary group like this if you want to kind of recomposition your image. So now you see that the halo isn't touching the top of the screen. So that's kind of better composition, at least in my opinion. I'm gonna go back and do the same thing. I'm gonna convert layers to tracks and then ungroup. Now we have this massive mess of stuff. First of all, I'm gonna get rid of this. This is a very small element. It's not even in the picture. So it's my signature. I'm gonna get rid of my signature for now. I can get it from the original file later. just go over each of these items. I think I'm gonna turn this into, it's in the right blend mode already. Actually, since the white is probably from the background, this could be a good point to go over canvas background settings. So you now see that everything outside the canvas is transparent, but I'm gonna go into canvas setting by tapping this time icon right here and change the background color. So I want the background color to be something, you can have it be transparent. You can say that that is where the white is coming from. So I'm gonna set it not to black, but I'm gonna set it to almost black, so that I have some editing room. So if I want to lift those colors and, for example, do additive or glowing effects, now it has a little bit of color there to work with. So because it's not black, it can pick up that color information and amplify that. But if you add, for example, a dodge over a black screen, it does nothing. So that's why I always recommend to avoid complete black and complete white, no matter what you do. Honestly, you will thank yourself in the editing phase. Okay, let's reposition some of these elements and maybe merge them together. Can I merge elements together? Actually, I don't know that. So here's a glow. Do this. Can I merge this with the layer below? I don't know. Go into timeline to see if that's possible. I don't think I can turn these into a single layer. Can I? Not for these, I would not want to do that anyway, since they are a glow and a normal blend mode. So I'm gonna long press this and make sure that the blend mode is in additive. What happened to the background? Did I not confirm it somehow? Maybe I just went back without noticing it. So here are stars, and if you look at this dashed line at the bottom of this content layer, that means that this layer, the stars, it's basically a clipping mask to this layer below it. And you can do clipping masks by long pressing the track and then going into track options. No, actually going into mask, and here you can see clipping mask. I'm excited to try the layer masks because that wasn't available to me in the beta at all. And you can do a lot of stuff like selections and hide elements and basically do all the layer mask things as with clipping masks. Yes, Silje Feroy is saying, is this an illustration you did in Procreate and imported to Dreams? Yes. When are you planning to make tweening animation of a character like Rick and Morty and other series? I really want to see tween keyframe-based animation. Frame-by-frame animation is everywhere. Is Procreate Dreams an app done on iPad, or is Dreams its own system like console? Procreate Dreams is an application like Procreate, so I am using this on my iPad, and this is a separate application from Procreate. So the illustration that you are looking at right now, that is an illustration that I have done in Procreate. But technically, you could do all of this stuff within Dreams. So I'm gonna open up Dreams to the right. And where did I put it? Well, here you see that here's also one element that I used in my previous video of the tutorial. Here's a plan that I sent to Procreate when I was working on a commission. This is not the plan that we ended up going with, but I really like the whole design anyway, so I wanted to turn it into an animation, and I sent this into Procreate. And you can also send process into Dreams. I know that I can drag brushes, but I don't know if I can drag an entire brush set. So this is gonna be the first time that I'm trying this. So I'm long pressing my own graphic illustration set and importing it. Because this is the brush set that I used to do this whole illustration. By the way, for the members of this channel, I'm gonna upload this Procreate file to the current downloads. So if you're watching this live stream during this month, you can play with the Procreate file and have all of these ready-made elements if you just want to practice animation and do something similar that is happening in this live stream. I'm gonna continue going through all of these different elements. This is layer that wasn't in the original artwork at all. It's a layer that was turned off, but I thought that this could be something that I could turn into a fun effect. Like, for example, let's turn it into additive blend mode, add a Gaussian blur to it. And maybe set it somewhere. And I just think that this could be a fun element to use. Just dragging it a little bit. I don't know, I kind of think that the rainbow looks cute. You can also order these layers the same way that you do in Procreate. So it's just like grabbing by long pressing it and then sliding it to wherever. The one thing that I am having like a lot of trouble with still is like identifying layers, because like they get so small in the timeline, and I'm sure that this is something that I will keep learning more things about. I'm gonna check if my brush set graphic illustration. Here are all the brushes that I used to create this illustration. This is one of my favorites, and I'm just gonna check if it works the same way. I'm gonna make a new content track. And on this track, I'm gonna, yes. That's super cool. So the brushes work just the same way that they do in Procreate, even if you made them in Procreate. Somebody was asking me earlier that like I want to do dampening. What is it called? Like the softening of a line to a brush. How can I do that in Dreams? So Dreams doesn't have a brush studio. So you can edit it in Procreate and then just bring it back. God, this like whole cord for my headphones is so tight, it will look like I'm scooting away and escaping the scene, but it's gonna go a little bit to here so I don't strangle myself with this. I'm gonna read some of the comments. can't import frame animation from Procreate to Dreams. I think you can always turn the animation into a video file and then just import the video file, and there you will have all of the frames. Yikes. Can lip syncing be done on Procreate Dreams? Yes, you can, for example, play the animation, and if you have your screen recording on, and in screen recording you have to set it to record voice, then you could lip sync your own voice, and then from this plus icon, you could just like add a video file that is your lip sync voice, and then add it to a video file below your content with just the sound. But if you're going through all of these trouble of creating an animation, then maybe it's just me, but I would probably personally want to make sure that the sound quality is better and record it on a better microphone, because your iPad has a really crappy sound quality. Thank you, DPLJ. How can you make the canvas fit your picture, like in Procreate? As you can see, right now, this is the canvas. This rounded edge, that's the edge of my canvas. And as you can see, my image assets are actually bigger. And this way I can do effects like zooms, for example, and use the extra canvas space for that in a more flexible way. So I'm making a new layer, and I'm editing onion skin. So onion skin first of all, and here I want to see what was in the previous one. Okay, I'm gonna go back and see what this actually does. So I have here two elements, and I want them to be separate. So this is the original layer. I want that to be on all the time, because I'm probably going to replace a lot of these elements. And now this additional layer that I just added, this is an individual frame-by-frame animation. And I want there to be some kind of like smooth line or curve to the way that this heart moves throughout this animation. So I'm gonna use this layer and create myself a reference just for the frame-by-frame animation. Not keyframes. I'm pretty sure that I can draw the heart again and again for a few seconds. Let's do 2 seconds, because that's already 60 frames. I'm gonna go on this layer and check what is there. There's this one heart. I'm gonna erase that for now and just create myself a guide. You don't have to use this guide in the final illustration or animation, but this can be a really handy way to keep the flow of your entire animation. I'm just creating like edges for the movement of the heart. And this is just a guide for the frame by frame animation. And now I'm gonna go back into Flipbook with this one. This is the layer. And now on the next frame, I'm gonna be using the same color. Let's say that this is my first frame. Or in the middle frame. And you can see how the onion skin system works this way better. I'm gonna go back into the previous one, delete this. Now the yellow color is the previous frame, and you can change the onion skin colors from here. Especially, for example, if I had everything already orange or red, then changing the colors is necessary in those situations. I'm creating the next frame. Okay. And you can always long press your layer. And I'm duplicating my layer so that I have 2 frames of that. Or maybe I should do paste. Not sure what the difference is. Let's do a duplication. Okay, so that moves me automatically to this layer. And I have 2 of these layers, and on this layer I'm gonna create clear frame. Clears everything. Okay, duplicate just duplicates. That's handy to know. So I'm working backwards, which is kind of probably not ideal for how most people's brains work, including mine. And if I go through these different frames, I can see that I'm at this place. Duplicate. Let's not. I'm gonna go here and cut this. No. Oh, creating a new layer cuts the continuity. So that creates a new layer. So now if I want to duplicate this, this should work. Okay. Now I got it. Sorry. Jason Smith is saying, each layer appears to be visually linear with the ability to edit each layer with movement and audio. A layer can have audio in it, but it can just be a visual layer as well. I think the question about lip sync is not about audio, but how to draw different mouth shape to fit the audio. For example, Toon Squid uses symbol. Yeah, for mouth shapes, there are really good reference files online that you can use. For example, Adobe has this character animator program where you can separately draw different mouth shapes for different bubbles. And even if you're not using those files, you can still download the character. A lot of these characters are free, by the way. And that way, you will have a clear reference point for what kind of set you need to create a proper lip syncing library for your mouth shapes. But I recommend starting from like the most basic set and then going into like more complicated things like different camera angles later, because like even just like straight head on, the set for different mouths, it's an incredibly long list. Not just for separate letters, but for like combined vowels. So don't overwork yourself to death with that immediately, because like it's a lot. For simple frame-by-frame animations, like the one that I'm doing right now, you can make every frame unique. But if you're animating on twos, like that already is gonna look really smooth. A lot of the big budget animations, like even a lot of the anime that you might be watching, they animate sometimes on 6s, and not just because it saves money in the budget, but because sometimes you can emphasize different things in animation that way. So all of that work has created this one movement. So that's how slow this is. And because I am animating on tools, it also affects the speed. And I think that looks quite nice. This is what it looks like in real time. I kind of like that. But I also want to create some movement, and I'm curious to see how I can, for example, animate the stars so that they float around, for example. Actually, I don't want these to be glued together, so I'm gonna go back into my original file and see if I can get them separate. Whoop. Where are my stars? You can go through my entire portfolio at the same time. Here. Okay. So what I want to have is like the mouths and the stars separate. I'm gonna grab this over here. Do a unique version of that, and the same for this. Okay, so you can even grab like a single layer from Procreate and drop it into Dreams. The mouth went to places. Okay. What if I group these together? And then move it. That looks better. I'm just gonna create a copy of this for the other star. Apparently you can drag it and directly set a layer as a clipping mask, which is something that I have to be careful of because I don't want to do it accidentally. Okay, and I'm gonna get rid of this. So I'm pressing copy instead of duplicate here, because if I duplicate this layer, what Dreams does is that it will set the duplication at the very end of this timeline, which seems like it goes on into infinity. So let's fix that issue first. So I'm gonna go into the project settings by pressing the Dream 2 file name. And for duration, I'm gonna just set something reasonable, like 10 seconds. I mean, like it took me forever to do those 2 seconds already. So I'm gonna do that. Now this is a little bit more reasonable. And instead of pressing duplicate here, I'm pressing copy. And on this layer, just checking that it's empty, here I'm pressing paste. And this way you can copy and paste elements so that they are on top of each other. You can drag it from the end of the timeline as well, of course, but I don't have time for that. It takes forever. What's the additional eye thing that is happening? It's from this file. Okay. I'm gonna try and find those eyes. Why can't I select with my pen? That's a good question. Now I'm in content mode, and now I'm in timeline edit. In timeline edit only, you can select your layers with your pen. But when you're in content mode, you select layers one by one. That's the difference. And remember that you can use this to your speed advantage as well. Like you can group elements, and then when you're in content mode, you can still move those groups. So getting used to switching between timeline edit and content mode is really important. I'm still getting used to it myself, honestly. And just like browsing the interface, it seems to be kind of a hurdle for me still. To find everything, and maybe that this file is just super large, but it does feel like there's a lot of things. when I moved that character around, you can see that it created automatically that keyframe. And because I want the character to be permanently here, I don't want this movement to happen. That means that I need to delete the keyframe from the beginning of the animation. And when I zoom in here, you can see that this is the original file, and this is the one that I moved. And here you can see the movement happening. Here is where I moved the item, so it automatically created a keyframe to the beginning of the animation. So if I go into here and delete this keyframe, I am removing the animation altogether. So now when we move, there is no movement, because I want these to have their own separate movements. And because it's a group, I can animate them separately. I mean, like, together. So I can animate the eyes and the star location at the same time. And when you press this icon in the move and scale mode, you can create a keyframe, and you can delete it the same way. So this works like the playhead, except that like when you're in this mode, then you can easily create keyframes that way. So let's add a little bit of wiggle to this whole thing. Do I do wiggle for 10 seconds? I guess I'm gonna do that. Yeah. I'm just gonna zoom out the entire thing into 10 seconds here. Go into performance mode and then start the wiggle. Okay, I tried to stop it around 10 seconds. I'm just gonna go and see where the last keyframe ended up. It's here. I'm gonna bunch up some of these keyframes together to make sure that the last keyframe is on the last frame of this animation. And now when I play back that whole thing, I can see that the performance is playing again. Honestly, I think this is like way smoother than I would be able to do it by keyframe animation by hand. So I think I'm gonna keep this. It looks like way more floaty and nice than what I could have done otherwise. So yeah. So far, Dream's better animator than I am. I'm fine with that. I don't have to be an animator. Consider me just like a curious, creative person doing this for now. Okay. We are still in performance mode because I didn't hit stop. I guess I could do that. Make sure that the animation is still there. Make sure that I'm on the right layer. And then instead of this movement, I'm gonna go into rotation mode. And rotation are those little hooks here. So I can animate this separately while the other animation that I just did in performance mode playing. Now I didn't continue it all the way through, so I'm gonna fix my own mistake by finding those like last keyframes. Oh, this is the last keyframe. I'm gonna expand it, and here I see that like my rotation keyframes are ending here. The values are handy to have in this situation because I can use those values to make sure that the first and last frame of this animation is identical. So if I want to loop back the animation, I need to make sure that the position and the rotation is the same. Remember that if you're doing, for example, a 360 rotation and you go into the rotation settings here, once you have opened the keyframe, remember to not set the first and last keyframe into the same angle, but consider that this change between the last and the first frame, that's movement also. So if there is no difference between those number values, then it looks like your rotation stops when the animation loops. So as an example, if I had on the last frame 350 as a rotation value, then my first frame could start from angle 1 to create the full loop. And in between, I would still have rotation. I'm kind of happy with the way that this looks so far. I'm gonna go and see if I can do squash and stretch in performance mode. I don't know if this is possible. Pressing stop and playing it from start. Okay. I really like that wiggle. Oh, they're so cute. My planet is missing a face for some reason. I'm gonna let this play and look at what you guys are saying. Subs is saying the drawing layer tools are definitely more restrictive right now, but to be honest, it's definitely better to do your drawing in Procreate first, then drag it into Dreams for animation. This is true. I think that they are probably gonna keep developing the drawing tools to the direction where Procreate is currently, but at this point, I think the drawing tools are better in Procreate. But the layers of videos, can you change those? I'm not sure what that question means. Been mostly using move and scale for creating keyframes. Will use flipbook tool tomorrow for my walk characters. Yeah, character walking, it takes a long time. Shaps has a lot of knowledge somehow. Yeah, tracks have all of the same blend modes as Procreate. And apparently when you import your Procreate file, like the blend modes are correct immediately. The only thing that doesn't get imported when you drag your Procreate file from window to window is the background color, so that you have to change by hand. How similar is this to After Effects? Not at all. No. Is the ordering layers the same in that way? Yeah, that part is same. But I think I've seen a lot of videos where people compare this to After Effects, and as somebody who has used After Effects for all of my video like title sequences on this channel for years, I just don't see I just don't see the similarity at all. I think After Effects is optimal for effects and procedural stuff and 3D integration and special effects and wide variety of things in video editing, but this is specifically for animation, hand-drawn animation. So I don't think anybody out there is like considering like, should I use After Effects or Procreate Dreams for X, Y, or Z? Those are not competing things, in my personal opinion. And I'm not trying to like talk crap about After Effects. I think After Effects is a great program, but it's difficult. it's really, really difficult. I mean, these Northern Lights that I have in these live streams, that's done in After Effects. And that to me was like a whole day of like learning how each individual tool works. And if I'm completely honest, I could not repeat that again. I would have to relearn some of those techniques if I wanted to create, for example, another Northern Lights animation. So my previous video, which is like a guide to all of the features in Procreate Dreams and how these features work, that video is about 20 minutes long. And after I was thinking that like, okay, I didn't cover clipping masks or masks, but like most of the basic features that you need to create any animation at all, it's already in that one single video that is already there. And there's not that much different in this version than the beta. Like all of those features are here and they work the same way. And you can learn that in 20 minutes. And out of those 20 minutes, like granted, I have wasted maybe like a few seconds on gushing over how loud my dog is, but like it's mostly just information. And that you could not do for After Effects, in good and bad. Like the good thing is, of course, that like in After Effects, there's just so much stuff that you cannot learn it in a week. You can't. But the good side is that like once you learn how something works for the thing that you want, there is a way to do it. And let's remember that I pay like 60 euros or something for the Adobe tools that I am using on this YouTube channel. So when I say that making YouTube videos is expensive, I mean that it's expensive every single month, not just like an 800 euro lamp that you need to buy 5 of, but like there are constant ongoing software costs for doing YouTube videos. And Procreate Dreams was like 20 euros or something on the App Store when I bought it today. So I think there's just like no comparison. in the value. And Dreams is gonna have free updates. So it sounds like I'm working for Savage and I'm creating an ad for Procreate Dreams right now. But honestly, like I said this on Discord just yesterday, I think, that I like Savage. Like, they don't pay me any money to speak about them, but I like that company. Not just because, like, everybody at Procreate that I have talked to have been, like, super nice and helpful with me. And when I have had, for example, issues with Procreate, and I have gone on their forums to, like, do bug reports or something, like, within a day, you get an actual person that will, like, either help you or put the bug into some sort of process where they fix it. And I've had, for example, issues with Premiere Pro in video editing, like everybody, and when I go into forums where other people are complaining about the same things, because you cannot talk to Adobe developers, you will see that like some core features have been broken since 2014 in Premiere Pro. And when I said something about this in previous Twitter, you will get a community representative to reply to you that like, please just like submit your bug report here. I did, but nothing happens. It's just like community representation for its own sake. It's not working in connection with the actual developers that are going to be doing the fixes. And for those reasons, like if something is not working with Procreate or now with Dreams, like they have earned my own personal like benefit of the doubt that like I will assume that they are working on it and will fix it soon. Because up to this point, that's everything that they have been like communicating to me with their actions. Here I'm just gonna create a bunch of single frames to space this out. Okay. See how that looks. By the way, I'm pressing 4 fingers on screen at once to go into this theater mode. Oh, I like that. There's a weird glitch in the one of the beginning frames. Maybe it's this. It's my reference file. Yeah. Oh my god. Look, mom, I did frame by frame animation. I know it's silly, but I'm so proud of myself. It's embarrassing. Now, what can we do with the faces? At least we can make sure that they are not escaping the star when the animation is happening. So where is the face? Is it here? Nope. How can this face be visible if it's behind the layer? Is this in additive blend mode? No. No, it's a group. Okay, so this is the group. So that's why those lines are here. And this is the actual layer. And this is... Okay. Sorry. I'm being dumb. Let's see what happens if I put this into clipping mask mode. Now it shouldn't escape the star shape when it's doing the movement. It might cause some like awkward corner tension. But it's kind of... It's there. At least it's not... The face is not escaping the bounds. Yep. Paying the Adobe tax is a choice. Yeah, for video editing, it's not really a choice. But I agree. Like, if you give them money, like, it's not like you're forced to do so. Imagine we have star moving up and down with 2 frames, one on top and one down. How Dreams manages to make the movement in between. So it records the location with keyframes. I'm gonna show that with the other star. Let's find the other star first. Sorry for being a disaster with layers. Honestly, I can't promise that I will change my ways and be any better about this ever, but let's create 2 keyframes. One for the beginning. Move and scale. That's the first keyframe. I'm gonna delete that keyframe. And on the last frame, create a second keyframe. I know that somebody at Procreate is just like cursing the way that I am scrolling through this timeline and not using some other workflow, but like, give me a second to learn how this works. Okay, now we have a second keyframe that is here, that is down. So this is only 2 different positions, and now because of this keyframe recorded that change, this keyframe, here we can see that the settings say translate X, translate Y, so those are the X and Y position of this layer group. Now, when I press play, it's gonna take that first did I have the first position of this whole thing? Yes. Maybe I didn't move it enough, so I'm gonna move it a little bit more to make that more obvious. Let's put it here. Okay. Definitely not what I was supposed to do. Can I copy this keyframe? No. Doesn't look like I can. Why doesn't it add a new one in here? Okay, now I have a keyframe in the first one and in the last one, just because there's an easy ease and easy out. That's why the movement is so smooth in the beginning and end. And if you don't like this sort of smoothness, you can delete the easy ease. I'm gonna delete it from the end and show you how that changes the movement. I'm gonna go here in the last keyframe, expand move and scale, and here on X and Y, I'm gonna go into set easing, into linear. For the Y, set easing linear. Now when we look back at this animation, you can see that it accelerates in the beginning. It should not change the speed at the end. Let's focus on this part. Go here and check what these are. I'm just gonna do an easy out for these. I don't think it turned into linear, because that looks like it's still smoothly transitioning. It definitely looks like it's breaking. So I don't know what's up with that. Sorry. But I don't like this type of movement anyway, so I'm just gonna get rid of it. The whole keyframe thing. Collapse move and scale and delete keyframe. And instead of this linear from point A to B movement, I'm gonna do the same performance thing as I did with the previous one. I'm gonna set this as a clipping mode. No, from mask options. Maybe I should move the entire group and not just this, so that I don't have a weird face moving around. I'm gonna go into timeline, select both of these, and then group them. Okay. Now back in the content mode, I am selecting not the layer below, not the face, but the group. And the group I'm gonna set into animation, doing a performance mode performance. Okay, and pressing stop, it's easy to forget to press stop. It's weird how I kind of like the wandering face for some reason. Maybe it's just because it looks like the face has more movement that way. And the wiggle is nice, so I'm gonna do the same wiggle for this. So here we are in the first frame. I'm gonna go into move warp. And record. And then do the same thing. I don't think this point is as good as the previous one. Okay. And then the rotation, the final thing. Okay. I should find the rotation and drag it to the 10th second. It would be so easy if I could like copy and paste keyframes. Here I see that the rotation keyframes are ending here. Things are wiggling. Are you able to adjust your brush settings like in Procreate? No, there's a brush studio in Procreate, but there's no brush studio in Dreams at this moment. Are you able... No. Shaps is answering all the answers. How are you finding it so far? I got the notification for it today, but forgot to download it. I think there's a learning curve to Dreams, maybe more learning curve than compared to Procreate itself, but you're animating things, it's not simple. So in comparison to other applications where you can do animation, in that sense, like it's easier, definitely. Let's add a little bit of a wiggle to the planet. Here's the planet. Actually, I think rotation for the planet could be nice. So for this, I'm actually creating a keyframe in the last part. of the whole thing. So here. Whoop. On this last frame, I'm going into rotate and rotating the entire thing. Oh, crash. The great thing about crashes is that at least it saves everything, so I don't have to do everything from beginning. Hey, Carolina. No, I think it's great that Shaps is so knowledgeable. I'm gonna read myself a lot of those comments later. I wanted to start by trying to animate a flickering candle flame, but I needed to make a sine wave and a ball to use as skeleton of the flame, and I realized I couldn't. For wavy movement, I would recommend, like for example, a flame. I would recommend doing this, that you do a reference layer for yourself, where you're doing this sort of like flickering movement. And you wouldn't need to use this in your final animation at all, but you could do 2 keyframes, like for beginning and the end. You would move that keyframe to a lower location. And then when you are doing your frame by frame animation, you would have that sort of like flickering wavy movement as a reference point. Of course, you can do like organic alterations to that, but then at least it would look like it's following that same line. Obviously, like your wave should move to a different direction. I move these past each other. Yes, I can reverse the movement this way. So when I was doing a flickering flame, I would just follow these guidelines on those frame by frame animation, and then when I'm done, I would delete this thing. Okay, now we have a little bit of wiggle. As an added effect, I want to have some like sparkling stars. So I'm gonna create a new layer here, and on this layer gonna create some additive sparkly stars. So as long as I have like an empty layer after the first layer, then it looks like I can start the animation part. I just like go many frames beforehand. Add one more frame here. Do the same for these. Have some star sparkliness. One thing that can make these sort of effects look better is if you have a little bit of glow in them. And I honestly think that these could be a little bit longer, and I don't think it breaks them apart. I'm just gonna draw them out a little bit. You can grab the edge of any content, and that will just like make it last longer in the scene once. In the tutorial video that I made, some people were commenting that they were already making their like plans and assets for the animation that they're going to make, and they had a plan for how to animate them. That's definitely something that I recommend, because if you just have like a vague idea or a painting and you start animating it, it's really difficult if you don't have the content done in a way that allows for like animating individual parts. Like for example here, I have all of these elements on their own separate layers, and that makes this process like much easier for me. But if that wasn't the case, then like all of this would be so much more difficult for me. Now I pasted the same content over itself, setting it at the exact same location. And on the first frame of this group, I'm adding a Gaussian blur filter to it. and then setting the entire group into additive blend mode. And this adjusts the blend mode of all of the layers. Okay. Copy. And second version of the same thing. And on this blur, I'm just gonna add a little bit more of it. And this should make that sparkling effect a lot more visible as it goes through the galaxy. Does anyone know how to select multiple drawings on the timeline? I haven't figured it out yet. Yeah, so you have to be in the timeline edit mode, and here, when you use your stylus, you can select multiple different drawings all at once. But if you're in content mode, then you can't do that. And that's how I grouped all of these items just now. I want to move this planet into view. The first thing that I need to do is locate those two elements. I'm gonna go into timeline edit, group these together. And in content mode, I'm gonna change the place here. Okay. I'm gonna add a little bit of hovering to this whole thing. And I think it would look more fun if the rings were animated a little bit separately. So I'm gonna go into there and continue into perform mode. Yikes. I just noticed that I'm controlling the edge points, so creating some glitchy looks at points. But overall, I think that's better. I will probably need to break these into two different layers though. And then just have first part and the second part. I wonder if I can move two different elements. I don't know. Let's just keep it like it is for now. Some of these stars are on clipping masks, and one thing that I haven't tried even once yet is to see if I can move a clipping mask individually. So I'm gonna set this into the beginning of the clipping mask. Go into the warp mode. Try to record this. and see if the clipping mask holds these stars in place. Here we can see the edge. So I'm only seeing it where it's supposed to be. That's good. Now, one more test, because that warp was just affecting that one corner of the scene. If you look at this, nothing up here is moving. So I'm trying to do a performance mode again, but from different corner. So warp, zooming out, the recording is still on. And now I'm grabbing this corner. Yes. So like you can see that this movement is still here. And by moving this node, it's just added to that previous performance. As long as I assume that I'm not moving the exact same node, I can do that. What if I add a movement to the source of the clipping mask? So this is the base where those stars are visible at all. So does the clipping mask still hold if I animate this thing in warp as well? Because if this works, like that could like be really cool for some underwater scenes. If you just like quickly pinch out, you can like see the full timeline. Okay, so now I should be moving the actual base. I think that's cool. Okay, so now I have the clipping mask and the base animated separately, and you can see that the stars are visible only in areas where the clipping mask is showing them. Like this part shows it really well. The light on Earth, you should put it on a separate track. A good point. Is it moving? I think the light is on a separate track on the Earth. Here is the radial light. I think if it rotated, that would be a bit too much. But if it rotates a little bit, I think that could be a workable solution. Sometimes less is more. Now it's not just static, but it's moving. The rotation is strange though. The rotation of the Earth, I mean. I need to somehow figure out how to make the movement of the rotation linear, because right now it's not linear. Is it now linear? I think it is. Now it's looping even. That's progress. Okay. Cool. Butterscotch Animations is saying, I tried importing brush files, but I just get stuck at a circle on screen. Honestly, I was able to import the entire graphic illustration set here by just dragging the entire set from screen to screen. So I didn't have that issue, but so I'm not sure if I can help you there. So this piece is called We Could Be Lovers, so it's not right if the Earth doesn't have a face, because it's also part of this relationship. I think with just that simple thing, it kind of looks like the Earth is looking at both of the lovers, and I think that's cool. One thing that is bothering me is that rainbow snapping into focus, so I want to delete that blur keyframe from it. First we need to find the rainbow. Keyframe from the rainbow is somewhere here. Okay, so it's this one. Let's just delete this one. Yeah. Maybe instead of like animating the blur of this, I could animate the opacity. I'll long press this and go into track options. No. Blend mode. I'm gonna read some of the comments quickly. Let this play for a while. Oh. For the entire duration. Okay. The liquid tool, bloom tool, as well as cloning isn't in the app. Well, honestly, I don't miss bloom tool because I would do that with a Gaussian blur anyway. That's always better. I never use it in Procreate either for the same reason. It's just better. And you can blur an animation, so I see no reason why you would use a bloom tool instead. Or somebody is like talking about loops. Like I would do loops with a duplication. So for example, if this piece of animation, this heart thing, if I want that part of the animation to loop, first, I think it should have a few more animations here in the beginning. I'm gonna go into drawing mode, find the flipbook, and then create those layers. Okay. Now that I have the beginning of this, making sure that it works, I'm gonna go into timeline edit and then just select everything on this one single row, like so, and then group this. And then on this group, I'm duplicating it. Now we can see that because it takes only this amount of space on the timeline, duplicate always duplicates after the content is finished on that timeline. So here, there's a second one of that. You can do as many as you want. I'm gonna spread this love a little bit thinner. Well, not thinner, but like space it in time. Love isn't zero-sum game. Just because I do it at other times doesn't mean make it any less meaningful. Okay. I don't know. Somehow this seems to like, I don't know, it enhances the story of this whole piece. Obviously, not all illustrations are going to work as well as animations, but in situations like these where the elements are so clearly separated, I think it kind of works surprisingly well. I mean, like, this was not something that I was even thinking about when I was making this illustration in one of these live streams. But seeing it here, I think, I don't know, super excited about all this. I think this halo could definitely help with the glow. Okay. Just a rotation. I think it's needed. I'm gonna do one more performance mode, but this time with rotation. And let's add a glow to it. And I think that glow could be animated, because then it looks like the halo is glowing like brighter and less bright at different times. I'm gonna first of all stop the recording because I forgot to do it yet again. Sorry. Creating a new content track in between here. And then in timeline edit, I'm selecting this layer. Hitting copy, and then here, paste. Making sure that it's at the exact same starting position, otherwise this will not work. And on the first frame, in content mode, I'm gonna do a glow. First, it's gonna look ugly because it's not in additive blend mode. I'm gonna fix that. I also think that it could be a little bit brighter in saturation. So I'm going to also HSB and then just crank up the saturation a little bit darker. And this thing, the Gaussian blur, this I can also probably perform. Can I? Likes. Okay. When I have the halo glowing, at different distances. I think the entire thing could be a little bit lower though. In timeline mode, I'm gonna group these two together. Let's just create an empty track. That is the question. If I scale it from that one point, I'm gonna see if the same scales happen here. No. So I can just scale from one point and then it will scale all the keyframes, which is what I want to happen here. Just so that that star has a little bit more room to move. The face is kind of moving weird now. I don't know, maybe I'm too used to it. Anyone knows how to change the opacity of a layer? That's a good question. Honestly, I remember that I stumbled upon that at some point, but honestly, I just don't know where it is right now. With these highlights, I can change the track, so when I'm zoomed out, it's easier to identify. I just labeled that purple, because that's the purple planet. And on the stars, maybe I could do that as well. And I label multiple things at once. No, I have to label separately. Now I can find the stars more easily. I mean, honestly, in this view, naming the layer doesn't really help that much. So seeing that color is much easier way to identify where it is. I'm going to do the same for this planet. That's the green Earth. These are the rocks in the scene. Because there are so many of these, I wonder what way would be best to move these. Maybe a rotation. This has to be a very small rotation. I think having the same keyframe in the beginning and end, maybe that would help. And then somewhere around the 5-second mark, I could have a turning point for the rocks. Already lost them. So I'm gonna try to highlight this as well in gray. Here I'm gonna do move and scale. Okay. And then get back to the first orientation around here. So that gets it back to its original position. Now fingers crossed, this should work. I think it kind of turns back a little bit too quickly around the 5-second area. So now with that gray line, I can locate it a lot quicker. I'm gonna put it into here. Right. No. Okay, that's the way to copy a keyframe, I guess. I need to make sure that these are set to 19. Now let's see that 5-second point. Yeah, it doesn't look that smooth, does it? Maybe it's missing that easing. It just stops. Maybe in between here, I should have one more phase to all of this. No. Okay, now it's at least better. I think they could still be a little bit closer to each other. or the rotation could be slower towards this part. So 5 is where it turns. So in that case, I'm gonna set here the rotation. Into 17.5. Okay, now the stopping is kind of smoother, and doing the same for out would fix that. So for rotation, the selection tools are different. Like when you highlight an element like this, you need to tap these red dots right here. Once you tap it, you can see the rotation tools, and the rotation tool is that arc that you see right there. Those are the elements that are rotating individual objects. Mikko, how can I select all keyframes and change their setting at the same time? Well, you can change the settings of a group, but yeah, I guess like I would select it as a group, or have the layer be part of a group and then make adjustments to that group. Maybe some sparks could be happening here. I'm gonna create a new content layer track, and there I'm gonna do one single frame. And then a new layer. I think for these onion skin settings, I need it to be something different than purple because it's too dark to see against the background. I'm gonna set it into green because I don't have any of that in the illustration. Maybe orange. Yeah. Just make that a little bit more sparkly. I know that it might look like these flipbook elements are the slowest things to do, and they are, because you are basically doing an entire drawing for that frame. So I would be very careful in your animation design. What parts are you planning to actually like frame by frame animate? Because that's going to be always the most time consuming part, especially if you have individual layers that have different colors in them. And if you have to do, like, for example, line art to that frame, then add colors to that frame, it's like several drawings. So here, planning really helps. Like having, for example, a character that is just made out of flat colors, or having done that character in the first place so that individual limbs are on separate layers. Those are things that can really save your ass when it comes to time management in the animation. However, I have to say that this part is just like super fun. I mean, doing effects like this, I could do this basically the entire live stream because it's just super addictive. I want to end these sparks at different frames so that it doesn't look like they all end at the same time. Look how smooth that looks. Like every single frame is its own drawing. The hard is 2 frames copied repeatedly, and these sparks are every single frame. Like, so that's the difference between smoothness. But I think the hard, it has its own like charm to it, especially since this piano notes pencil, it has that gritty texture to it. So if every single frame was different on a larger area like that, I think it would cause this sort of like flickering that you don't get to see or appreciate that gritty texture on that surface. But on the smaller elements, the texture really doesn't matter. So the process usually don't matter, but in this sense, you want to consider like how active your surface is. I'm gonna copy this and then duplicate it at a different part of the animation, like for example here. I'm just gonna do that twice for the entire animation. Make those like unique moments that happen. I think that's cool. And in smaller scale, you can also do it to individual stars. Yikes. So I already have like a ton of different layers, but I haven't run into like any layer problems. And just as a point of reference, I am using an M1 16 gigabit RAM iPad to do this. So that might also have an impact on the layer limit. I'm gonna do these streaks that make the whole movement faster. And then squash the streaks as the sparkling ends. And I know I'm basically making the light look like it's physical object, but it's a graphic illustration anyway. Like everybody needs to chill. Okay. And because this sparkle is so generic, in a good way, that makes it usable. And reusable, I mean. Okay, so now I'm gonna group these. To make it even more generic on purpose, I'm gonna rotate it a little bit. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. I can't seem to grab the rotation handle for some reason. What if I have it at the biggest face? Does it affect the bounding boxes? Not really. I think the rotation is adjusting the location, so that honestly looks like a bug. Maybe my animation size is too small for this to detect those changes, I don't know. I'm gonna keep it at the rotation that it is for now, because honestly I cannot figure that out. Okay. Well, at least it's cool that I can copy and paste hand-drawn frame-to-frame animations to different locations like this, but I wish that I could rotate it so that I could have like different rotations for different sparkles, because it would just make it look a little bit more organic, or at least when I'm drawing it, I should pay attention to draw it in the correct orientation so that it would look less repeated. When I selected an empty section of keyframes, it let me set easy ease to all of them. I think easy ease is on by default. Try editing the anchor, placing it in the middle of the animation, then rotate. I think that's a good point. So anchor points is something that I did not cover earlier. So here is this group. If I go into this like 3 dots part that you see like on the top right here, by pressing it, you can edit anchor point. And where is the anchor point? Usually the anchor point is in the middle, but it's here. It's in the middle of the frame. No wonder rotation was giving me such weird results. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, who was that? Whoever said that. Thank you so much. Okay. So now the anchor point is in the middle. And if I go into move and scale, and now I edit the rotation, yes, now it works the way that I intended it. Yes. That's so great. It's Taked who said that. That's awesome. By the way, I'm gonna show you one more thing with the anchor points that I already talked with Procreate people about. I don't know if that's what they intended, but that's what I'm thinking right now. Okay, so now it's set to default. I'm gonna go into this group again and copy, and let's say paste. Now it's so much more usable because I can use the same thing for different areas. Move and scale first. Oop. Too big, it's too big. Set it here, and then go and delete the first keyframe. Maybe it's the second keyframe that I need to delete. Yes. Okay. I can also scale it on top of like rotating and everything else. So one cool thing that you can do with those anchor points is, I'm just gonna create a new layer. This is not gonna be part of like the workflow for this, but just to make this live stream as useful as possible to you guys, bear with me here. So here I'm making a line-like shape. Okay. And now if I have another content layer with another line-like shape, What I can do when I'm animating this part is if I go into this layer and open these three dots, edit anchor, and I place the anchor to this. You can think about it like a pin or a joint or a limb. For example, a knee or an elbow. Now, if I go back into move and rotate, and I go into the rotation mode, you can see that I am rotating this point just around that one part. So if you have, like, for example, a graphic shaped character, this is something that you can do to animate limbs. I just don't recommend having multiple of these attached to each other, otherwise it gets quite confusing. But this saves a whole lot of time in orienting different pieces. And you can create an entire skeleton this way, but with the limitation that you can have an element attached from one point only, because groups also, if you go into move and scale, these also have their own anchor points. So the anchor point for this entire thing could be here. And now if I go into move and scale, and rotate this entire thing, I can have that part of the movement separately within the group, and this part that is moving the entire limb, it's working separately. And within this animation, there's another animation for this part. So if I expand this animation, for example, you can see that I am moving this limb and changing this at the same time. I'm gonna make the angle a little more drastic. Do you get what I'm trying to say with this? So that you can use these rotation point pins like joints in your character animation. And this saves like a whole lot of time. Or you can use this as a reference point for an animation that you are drawing on top of. At least you will have like way more consistency that way. Okay. What's within this group again? Oh, that's the sparkling. Maybe we should repeat the sparkling. think that's kind of cute. The face of the other star is like all over the place all of the time. But, it's a work in progress, okay? I was just thinking that for this, maybe a scaling animation up would look cool. So if I start, for example, from a really small scale, and this could be a more blurred version of the same thing. And then when I get to the end of the animation, it could be like so big that it kind of goes out of the scene. To make this easier to identify, I'm setting it to pink and then zooming out to make sure that I'm on the right layer. Because what I want to do in the beginning is to have more Gaussian blur when this thing comes into view, and then kind of slowly get it into focus as it gets bigger in the middle part. So this is Gaussian blur mode. I'm gonna set it to record. I'm gonna get into 9. That looks cool, but like there's this like one part where it looks weird here. This I don't like. Still too sharp here. In this case, because it's an additive layer, one way that I can fake opacity, at least, I'm sure that the opacity will be found at some point. Because I could swear that I have used it at least once. So here I'm setting the HSB as the, I don't know, saturation change. This could still be in 50. Good. Do I now have a keyframe for it? Yes. So for that same keyframe, I'm gonna adjust the start point and set this into black. because this is an additive blend mode, that means that the visibility is basically 0 now. Let's test. Okay, more subtle. I like it. There shouldn't be like any limitations on like posting your socials, except like if automatic censoring gets in the way, I can manually like make it visible, because I should see what YouTube automatically takes out. Okay. I think that's most of the things. Like one thing that we haven't tried yet is a layer mask. And I honestly have no idea how these work, because these weren't visible or usable in the beta. So I'm going into layer mask. Oh, it turns this layer into layer mask. Right. So what if I just make a new layer then? And this layer I'm gonna fill with white. Okay. It's a white layer, so it should show everything through. But let's do like a black line, something very easy for everybody to see. Do this. Okay. And now I'm gonna set this. Do I need to set it as a clipping mask first? Should be visible already here. So maybe the clipping mask wasn't what I was supposed to do. I can't see those edits here. I'm drawing on this area right now with black, and I can see it in either. I can see it here though, which is strange. So now it's a clipping mask on this additive layer. What if I set this as a layer mask? It looks like if I set it as a layer mask, it is setting it just the same way as a clipping mask. But I don't see the effects here at all. Now it's showing everything through. But what if this entire layer mask was black? So let's go back and then just switch to none, and then turn it in a black layer, mostly black layer, and then go back, mask, layer mask. No, it's gone. I wonder why that is. Do you know what to do when your pencil isn't working? First of all, check that your Bluetooth is on and that your Apple Pencil is charged. Then make sure that you have this part screwed on tightly, because sometimes it comes off on its own and that can cause the pencil not to function. I absolutely have no idea how this layer mask works. So maybe it's better if I don't try to solve that right now. Actually, if it was just a clipping mask, and this is an additive layer, I'm adding an empty track now, and I'm doing a black line on this empty layer. And since this is an additive blend mode layer, now if I add this as a clipping mask, doing basically the same thing. I know this doesn't like fully solve the thing that I'm trying to figure out. At least this is a way to make the light effect look more organic. See that in full screen. And I guess I could have like multiple of these So the movement would look even more organic that way. So if I drew a mountain with sunset and I want it to move, I can use the performance method. And the sunset will stay the same. So do you mean you would do perform on the mountain or on the sunset? At least like in sunset, I would probably be moving the sun, but you can move anything. And the keyframes will be created automatically. I guess it's like reading the differences between your movements. So if you have a very shaky hands, it might create more keyframes. But if you have very shaky hands like me, you will have tons of keyframes throughout the performance. I think having more of these planets move could be cool. I can also upload this entire animation file into the members downloads for this month. So in addition with this process, if you want to play around with this file and see how it works for yourself, I can slap the Procreate file and the animation file and the process so that you can test out. At least this graphic style is like really somehow like very easy to merge with this type of animation. I guess because it's not that realistic, you don't expect the movement to be realistic either. If you're not happy with your animation in performance mode, I guess you could always go here and like just delete some of those keyframes. I haven't tried this before, but in theory, I guess this would work. I just think that the beginning of my animation was a bit jittery. So deleting some of those keyframes. That can help. I guess the more attention to you want one object to get, the more movement it should have. So if you want an element to be like very kind of static and just in the background, then maybe not this much movement is required. I'm just gonna check the translate X, translate Y. Those are both at 0 here. So just as an experiment, I'm gonna go into the last keyframe. Just see that looping part. Now it ends at the same point where it starts. And if I'm not doing rotation, like the rotation should have a different thing to make it smooth. So rotation needs to take into consideration how much rotation is happening throughout the animation. But for movement, I think I'm gonna do the same for different frames to make sure that like each frame that I have done with performance mode ends in the exact same location as it starts to make this loop. Or otherwise, for effects, it needs to be either not visible. I can't have like a mid animation effect going on if it's keyframe animated. If I can use just like visibility to turn it off. Okay. Here are my asteroids. If I want to add some unique variation to them, I'm gonna find a point in the animation where this would be ideal. I think this part is pretty good. Here. Starting from this point and ending at after the second. So here I'm gonna go into the drawing mode, draw stuff, and set this as a clipping mask. Notice that I'm not in clipping mask mode anymore. I wonder if I can group this and set the entire group as a clipping mask. Here I see this like little arrow that is indicating that it's a clipping mask. Now in timeline edit, I'm selecting all of these. I can set the entire frame by frame animation as a clipping mask. So this way I can make, for example, lighting effects for these asteroids. That's cool. So go back here into drawing mode. zoom in, for example, here. At the turning point, 5 seconds. And create a new layer here for frame by frame animation. In flipbook mode. Okay. Now I know that when I create a new page, it automatically deletes that continuity from that layer. I'm gonna wrap this light around this edge, the asteroid. Until I hit the point in the animation where the movement kind of stops, like it does right now. And then just copy this. Until it starts moving backwards. So the frame needs to be empty before I can paste on it in this flipbook mode, apparently. But the cool thing with this is that like I can paste a frame and still edit it by hand to add a little bit more movement to it. This is the exit animation of that light effect. Okay. Now we know that we can go into timeline mode. Select all of these, all of them, set it as a group. And then in content mode, long press, and then set it as a clipping mask. Okay. Maybe a light and blend mode would be best. And then just do the same for every single asteroid. It's gonna take a while. Or you could create a generic, like glow gets brighter effect like this, and then just copy and paste it to different places. But to do that, you would have to make sure that, first of all, your rotation point, the pivot point, edit anchor, that it has to be in the middle of this effect. And now if I take this and I copy it, let's paste it to a different part. Like for example here. And then to move and scale with rotation, obviously. And making sure that it doesn't have any beginning keyframe. This point, I will need to move to a different place. Nope. Wrong layer. Okay, that's what I want. I guess you could like take the entire lighting for each border this way if you have basically endless patience. But one more thing that you can do with these transformations is that they don't have to be uniform. On top of grabbing the edges, you can also grab the sides. If you grab one of these like dashed lines, you can squish one of these layers. Now I'm gonna go back here and the scaling options. And here I'm gonna remove these. So now the squishing doesn't move. So that makes these two different parts in the animation look a little bit more organic and harder to recognize as copies. And with these small movements, you can kind of like direct the attention to have happen different things at different parts of the illustrations, all at the same time. If you create a guideline for your animation as like a separate layer, let's say that, for example, I wanted to make the Earth move. Let's find Earth for it in the first place. Earth, where are you? Here. I thought I changed your color into green. What happened? That's better. So if I wanted to animate this layer so that it bounces, I'm creating an empty track. And on this empty track, you can create your, for example, arc for the bounce. So obviously, if it's just linear movement, all you need to do is to just draw a straight line. I said straight. But within this, one element of planning that you can do when you're moving it up and down is that you can, for example, count your frames. How many hand-drawn animation frames are you gonna do if you're not doing it in performance mode? So if you have squash and stretch with that previous scaling function that I just previously showed, in this mode, you can draw your own reference for the frames. And this is what I did with pixel art as well, is that you make the frames happen closer together. So the amount of movement that you are adding makes the bottom and top half of this entire animation have more frames. Now, if you go into the frame by frame animation, new layer, go into drawing mode, and then just open the flipbook. And if you were animating this earth moving, let's say that I'm using this point as a reference, then on the second keyframe, I don't have to kind of guesstimate what the animation is going to look like, because I already have this kind of reference point of a bar here. If you really want to like stretch it out and exaggerate your animation, it's just like one big sweep like this, and then squish it down. It just makes the whole thought process like way quicker when you can have like a reference point like that. And for going back, I would just like duplicate those frames, not actually draw them by hand again. But you don't have to have this reference point on in the final animation, but this is what that ball looks like. Like there was just like zero effort in like trying to make that reference point in any way accurate or anything, but just like see how much smoother that already looks like. And then you can just like flip that and copy it backwards. And especially if you have like movement that is like going all around, there it definitely helps if you have like a reference line that you know where the motion is going. Or if you have, for example, a limb that is going back and forth like this, just drawing a simple arc for it. Let's say that like this is the point where the fingers of your characters are rotating. So you could have this sort of like same arc for that motion if you're, for example, doing a walk cycle, to make sure that like your hand isn't like stretching into different proportions at different parts of that animation. And there you could use that same logic. Like these frames go by quickly, and here in the end you could like divide it by half, and then have an endpoint. Same here, divide it by half, and have an endpoint. Now I have the exact same amount of like pause and acceleration for this animation guide. Okay, so that's 3 hours of like some problem solving and me trying to figure out dreams. I'll make sure that I will upload all of these assets to the members download folders right after this stream, so that if you guys want to like try these brushes with the same style or these elements, that it's easy to do. And I'll see you in more tutorials and videos, probably about dreams in the next videos, because like this is something that I definitely want to keep learning more about. And I don't know, I'm just super excited to see what I can make with this, because what I have here, I think this is just like the beginning, and how to combine all of these elements, like for example, the layer masks, once I figured that out, and making these sort of organic elements, like this lighting effect that expands, it immediately makes me think of underwater scenes and animating a school of fish. I think that could be like super fun. You know how much I love underwater scenes. So please let me know any questions that you have, and I'll do my best to figure those out for you and make tutorials about those things. So if I'm not able to answer, like as I'm working here and some part of the chat is just kind of flying by, make sure that you leave it in the comments as a question, and I will get back to you and maybe make a video tutorial out of it for you, because some things are just easier to show in practice than to write in a comment. But I will 100% read all of those, don't worry. Whenever I try to export a file after animating, it takes forever. Why? Remember that your export might be affected by the size of your canvas, so how big of a file you are rendering. Like for example, all of my YouTube videos, which are 4K, they take forever to render because I have so much stuff in them. So yeah, with an iPad, no matter what kind of an iPad you are using, rendering video files, it's still a thing. Even though it's playing here in real time, rendering it into and packaging it into a video container, that will take time. I'm gonna go into export settings here in preferences. Properties. Nope. This is the size of this canvas. Oh, it's in share. Okay. And here, I'm exporting it as a video. Well, this is only 10 seconds. So it's probably also dependent on if you have a really long animation, that it will take more. But even 10 seconds takes that much time. Here are custom settings, and in custom settings you can have a rescale, and here you can set a custom setting size for your exported video. So if you want it to go quicker or you don't need that much resolution, you can lower it from here. But I have a huge document size when it comes to video, so it's already a big file size. Also because I saved it in .mov format, that makes the size even bigger. If you want to have smaller files, then I recommend MP4, because as a PC user, that's easier for me to use in videos. Okay. Thanks for joining. And if you have any ideas for like video tutorials on what you want me to make next, please let me know in the comments, and have fun animating stuff. Okay, I'm gonna go and upload those assets now to the members download folder. And if you have any questions, like the members in Discord, like I'm happy to answer questions there, of course, as well. Okay, bye. The ends of my live streams are always so long.